So, what does the book of Isaiah say about the Messiah, God's special representative on earth who will rescue the world someday? Let's start with this possible prophecy about Messiah from Isaiah 7:14, starting verse 10. Then the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, Ask a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Make it deep as Sheol or as high as heaven. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, nor will I test the Lord. Then he said, Listen now, O house of David. Is it too slight a thing for you to try the patience of men, that you will try the patience of my God as well? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. He will eat curds and honey at the time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good. For before the boy will know enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread will be forsaken. At first glance, in English, it seems to be talking about a miraculous virgin birth. However, the Hebrew word used here for virgin, Alma, does not exactly match the meaning of the English word virgin, and the word Alma can simply mean a young woman. So the initial basic point of this prophecy was that a child would soon be born in the time of King Ahaz, and his name would be called Emmanuel, which means God with us, or God is with us, because God would provide political relief from their enemies in just a few years. However, is that all it means? Or is there a hint of a future child? Remember that with typology in the Bible, sometimes the prophets would be describing both an immediate and a future fulfillment. Here are several hints that this prophecy might be referring to a later fulfillment beyond just the child born in Ahaz's time. First, the Hebrew starts out using singular second-person pronouns in verse 11. Ask a sign for yourself. That's King Ahaz. But then in verses 13 through 14, it switches to using plural second-person pronouns. The Lord will give you, plural, a sign. So the house of David. And then in verse 16, it goes back to singular pronouns. So God says that this is a sign for the whole house of David, not just for necessarily just King Ahaz. God had previously promised David that God would give him a descendant who would rule forever. In other words, that the Messiah would come from David's line, as we see to God's promise in David in 2 Samuel 7, 1 Chronicles 17. So this could be a hint that there would be a secondary greater fulfillment by the Messiah in the future, and that this child in Ahaz's time would be a type pointing ahead to the Messiah, the antitype of the Messiah. Also, several hundred years later, but still 100 years before the time of Jesus, when the translators of the Septuagint were translating the Old Testament into Greek, they translated this word Alma with the Greek word Parthenos, which does typically mean virgin. So these translators thought that there was a hint here about a miraculous birth, perhaps, which actually fits with the ancient hint in Genesis 3:15 that the seed of the woman would someday crush the serpent. And then Matthew, the disciple of Jesus, in writing his book about Jesus' life, quoted Isaiah 7:14 related to the virgin, related to Jesus' birth. Isaiah said that the child would be called Emmanuel, or God with us. And Matthew says that Jesus fulfilled this. Not just the virgin birth aspect, but the God with us aspect, perhaps is what he was referring to. For more about this passage, please see the supplemental links for details. And it's interesting that there's actually several passages in Isaiah talking about a child. This is the first one, Isaiah 7:14. Then we get to Isaiah 9, Isaiah 11. So there's a series of several of these talking about this child who'd be born. And so this could fit very well with the next ones. Next, let's look at Isaiah 9. But there will be no more gloom for her who is in anguish. In earlier times he treated the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali with contempt, but later on he shall make it glorious by the way of the sea, on the other side of the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. Those who live in a dark land, the light will shine on them. You shall multiply the nation, you shall increase their gladness. They will be glad in your presence, as with the gladness of harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. For you shall break the yoke of their burden and the staff on their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, as at the battle of Midian. For every boot of the booted warrior in the battle tumult and cloak rolled in blood will be burning, fuel for the fire. For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There will be no end to the increase of his government or of peace on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness from then on and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this. So here it says that in the future, God will break the yoke of the Israelites' burden. He will set them free. But not only that, all battle gear will be burned. Why? Basically, there will be no more need for warfare. Complete peace will happen all around the world and will never end. See verse 7. How does this happen? A special child will be born. He will reign on the throne of David forever. So this is the Messiah that we've heard about before, we've looked at in previous videos. Now, notice these titles that are applied to this child in verse 6. Prince of Peace shows that he will bring peace to the world. Wonderful Counselor. The word wonderful here actually means astonishing or extraordinary or mind-boggling. He is a counselor, showing that he will be very wise, with the wisdom surpassing ordinary wisdom, and with perfect knowledge and also compassion in how to apply it. Eternal Father, which can be translated as Father of Eternity. This title shows that this man is not somehow a mere mortal man. He's somehow eternal. And the title Mighty God is perhaps the most surprising of all. It's not saying God is mighty. It's saying this son, this child, will be called Mighty God. And the word is not Elohim, which could translate as God or a great ruler, but the word is El, specifically El Gibor, Mighty God, where the word El is used only of God himself in the Hebrew Scriptures. How could it be that a baby could be born who would be called Mighty God? What does that mean? I think it means exactly what it says, that the Messiah will be somehow fully divine, fully God. We know from other parts of the Bible that there's only one God, and somehow the Messiah will be Mighty God. We can fit this together with the other messianic prophecies in the Bible and understand that this Messiah will be the Son of God, the angel of the Lord, etc. Yet specifically, he will be born, as verse 6 says. He will not simply appear fully grown in the world, as previously, the angel of the Lord, but in the future, Isaiah says, the divine Messiah will be born, and he will be called Mighty God. One final point to see in this passage is in Isaiah verses 1 to 2. The Messiah will specifically be active in Galilee of the Gentiles, which is in the northern region of Israel. Next, let's look at Isaiah chapter 11. In verses 1 through 5, let's read this and we'll get back to discussing it. Then a shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse, and a branch from his roots will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and strength, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord, and he will not judge by what his eyes see, nor make a decision by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he will judge the poor, and decide with fairness for the afflicted of the earth. And he will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Also righteousness will be the belt about his loins, and faithfulness the belt about his waist. And the wolf will dwell with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little boy will lead them. Also the cow and the bear will graze, their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox, the nursing child will play by the hole of the cobra, the weaned child will put his hand on the viper's den. They will not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So in verses 1 through 5, it keeps describing the special man who's called a shoot from the stem of Jesse, or a branch. Now Jesse was the father of King David, so it's talking about a descendant of Jesse, and we know that Messiah will come from David, so we can see that this is talking about the Messiah. It says the Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, and talks about how you'll have wisdom and make righteous judgments, not only perfect knowledge of all the situations where judgments are needed, but also perfect fairness and perfect moral uprightness. It will not be possible to bribe the Messiah or trick the Messiah. There will be no more injustice when he comes. Verse 4 shows the typical combination in Isaiah, assuming the rich people are wicked and are oppressing the poor, and when Messiah comes, he will fix the situation, slay the wicked, and bring justice to the afflicted. Not only will human civilization be restored to peace, but even the animal kingdom and the whole earth will be fixed. There will be no more killing, destruction, pain, carnivory among the animals, or hurting others. This is a picture of perfect peace across the whole earth, and it's what is coming when the Messiah comes. Also, notice that this has definitely not yet happened. So, we'll talk more about that. And how does that fit with the Messiah's coming, or two comings?